So about a year and a half ago, I met this guy named Austin Lenny on a podcast. I went on his podcast. We had a conversation. We were there to talk about real estate, but within the first 3 minutes, we got on the topic of mindset and personal development, which were conversations near and dear to both of our hearts. And within 20 minutes, 30-minute podcast, we were there to talk about real estate. We ended up not talking about real estate at all. And we sparked off this kind of bromance. And I think it was the beginning of 2021. Yeah, it must have been 2021, January, that we launched the Brain Dump. And so this was a podcast where Austin and we tried to unpack the science of achievement, the science of success, what's it mean to be a successful person. And so we brought on all these really badass, awesome people from all different walks of life. We had artists, we had entrepreneurs, we had athletes, to ask them, how do they define success? What's it mean to them? And we had a ton of really awesome conversations. We ended up doing about 60 episodes, and we still do a couple every now and then, maybe once a month we get together and do an episode. But I wanted to share with you guys one of the more impactful concepts that came from that period of time when we were doing those podcasts together. Austin shared something which I had heard other people doing before, but for whatever reason, sometimes you just need to be in a different place in life to receive a message a little bit differently. It hits just differently depending on where you are. So you can hear the same thing, at different points in your life, and it just doesn't resonate. And for me, a lot of my life was the fact that I wasn't learning new things. I just was finally having certain messages penetrate my consciousness. The idea that discipline equals freedom. This is something that I'd heard a lot growing up, especially with ADHD and trying to struggle to figure out how to get my life together. But there came a point then in my late 20s, when finally that message, discipline equals freedom, just hit different. And it was the same with this concept that Austin shared with me. And at the time that I'm recording this, it's actually December 13th, 2022. So we're rounding out the year here. We're entering into this new period where we're going to start fresh with 2023. And that's very exciting for people because it delineates this very natural stopping point for a lot of goals. And I think there's nothing wrong with setting annual goals or anything like that. But I like having this concept of a theme. And this is what Austin shared with me, is that each year he creates a new word or a new word that signifies the theme for that year. And it kind of influences everything that he does moving forward. I thought that was really cool in the sense that you kind of brand the year and say, this is what we're focusing on. And we had done this actually at Escape Climbing. Each year we'd sit down with our annual plan and lay it out and say, okay, what's the objective? What are we trying to accomplish this year? And we'd bring it to the team and say, here's the next operation. And we'd give it a fancy name. So for instance, the very first operation, this was a 2-year operation, was called Operation Cannonball, which was borrowed from this idea of back in nautical times, not nautical times, but in the pirate days when, people were roaming the open seas. If you saw a boat coming at you from across the way, you wouldn't just start shooting your cannonballs at it. Because if you do that, you haven't triangulated the distance, the wind, or any of the waves, any of that stuff. And so what's going to end up happening is you're going to expend all your cannonballs and probably miss 98% of them. And by the time you triangulate the target and hit them, you're going to be out of cannonballs. All right, so you don't lead with cannonballs. In fact, what you do is you start firing bullets, because bullets, you probably have a whole lot more of those on your ship than you do cannonballs. So you send somebody out to the front of the ship and you have them firing bullets at the other ship and triangulating based off of that. And then once you have your target and you know that you can hit it, then you start firing cannonballs. So this comes to a concept, fire bullets before cannonballs, which has been a very helpful concept for us in business in general. At that point in Escape's life cycle, we had been firing bullets for a number of years, where these were small attempts to find product market fit. We would launch this product and that product and see what hit, what didn't. And we would do that on a small scale to kind of prove out the concept that, okay, there's a market here and we have the capacity and the team capable of fulfilling on that. So Operation Cannonball was a very considered effort on our part to say, well, let's start firing the cannonballs at the market. We know we can hit it. Now let's try and sink it. Let's try and win this war. And so we scaled up. We put about $2 million of invested into the infrastructure, into the team, into the materials, everything that we were doing to take the operation to the next level. And then we started firing cannonballs. once we had started hitting at scale, when we grew very quickly from doing $400,000 in top line revenue to about $3 million in the span of just 2 years, then it was a matter of, okay, we've hit these cannonballs. Now, instead of just pure growth, now we're entering into operation escape velocity, where, okay, now that we've pulled even with the industry leaders, now let's try and reach escape velocity, which is, the concept that when a rocket is trying to leave the Earth's atmosphere, it needs to be moving at a speed superior to the gravitational pull of the planet. Otherwise, you're just never going to escape the gravitational pull. You're always just going to get sucked back in. And so we viewed our competition as, that gravitational pull. How do we escape them and get to that point of no return where they can't catch us? We're gone. And so everything was focused on optimization and efficiency and productivity and getting the most out of all the systems and the team members that we had. Instead of just trying to grow from 4 members of the team to 20, instead of trying to go from 20 to 80, we said, okay, with these 20, how can we get the same amount of output, or like double or triple the output, but with the same team? And so those were like the guiding principles, the guiding words of those years. And when Austin brought this concept back up in terms of like his personal life, I had never really done that, honestly. Like, it had never occurred to me to say like, okay, the theme of this year is going to be around this concept. And so I tried it out last year for the very first time in 2022. And my word of the year was hyperfocus, which, I mean, if you're hanging around these parts, you probably heard me say this thing a million times, but it meant something very particular to me at the beginning of the year, which was, with Invictus Capital, we had been experiencing a ton of growth over the last couple of years. And one of the things that happens when you start to reach, you start achieving a lot of success, is that the opportunities that you used to say no to were pretty easy because they were small opportunities and they weren't going to move the needle all that much anyway. And so in the beginning, you have to learn how to like zone out these small, insignificant distractions and stay focused on the big opportunity, which was, Invictus and scaling and growing, raising capital, finding acquisitions and all that stuff, and then operations. And there comes this point where the shiny objects become very compelling, very interesting, right? And so I knew coming into 2022 that there was going to be a ton of opportunities and that I needed to stay focused, hyper-focused on what we were doing, specifically because we had about $40 million of acquisitions in the pipeline, which coming into 2022, our portfolio size was only around maybe $30 million. And so this was effectively going to double us. So we had a really big year lined up in front of us. And I knew that if I wasn't careful, my tendency was to get distracted, get off onto a tangent and start taking up other side projects and things that just weren't going to move the needle forward. So hyper-focus was key. And so I hyper-focused on my health and I hyper-focused on Invictus. And we got to the point where we closed all those deals, and in around September, October, started becoming clear that, okay, we were going to get these things done. The operational team was in place and we're good to go. And so then I could start taking on these side projects. And you've probably seen in the last couple of months, our YouTube channel, this launch of this podcast, the Hyperfocus Masterclass, like the Hyperfocused Entrepreneur newsletter, just putting a lot of effort into building out these other avenues of thought and of intrigue for me, things that I find really fulfilling, but I had to put them on the back burner. If you remember from like the early episodes of this podcast, I actually started recording these in 2022 at the beginning of the year, thinking, okay, I'm going to release these and do a daily podcast all through 2022. And I recorded the first maybe 50-ish episodes, 60 episodes, and then I pulled the plug in about May because I was like, okay, this is only going to distract me from the hard work that I need to do at Invictus to get it to the place where it needs to be to grow and to sustain and continue moving forward. And so, sometimes saying no is the hardest thing in the world, right? Like there's these things that you want to do, your time, maybe you find it very fulfilling, very rewarding. But, that was my word of the year, was hyperfocus. And as we round out this year, I'm starting to think about next year and what my word of the year is going to be. And you're probably going to be listening to this episode, I'm going to guess sometime in January, maybe February, depending on when it rolls out, because I like to batch these episodes and make sure that I have like a whole month of recordings in the tank so that, with a daily podcast, I don't fall behind. But the words that I'm currently thinking about, I just want to share one with you. One is optimization, and the other one is limitless. And I don't know yet which one I'm going to go with, and maybe it's not going to be either one of these. So, bear with me on this one. But I like the idea of optimization and limitless because one of the things I'm thinking about hard in 2023 is like, how do I take my health to the next level? How do I optimize it? How do I become limitless with my health? How do I become limitless with my wealth, with my skills, and with my mindset? Like, how do I optimize for these? And so those are the words that I'm playing around with right now. And I wanted to share all this with you because, depending on when you're listening to this, you might have already missed the beginning of the year. So you might have lost a month. But it's never too late to pick a word of the year or a word of the month even and say, this is going to be my guiding focus for this period of time. And I think it can serve you. It can be a really nice little guiding North Star, a compass to direct your actions and your activities throughout the year. So I'd be curious to hear from you guys. Like, what are the words that you've chosen for yourself and for your year moving, as we move into 2023? Let me know. I put that, go leave a comment wherever you're listening to this on social media. Just shoot me. If it's Instagram, it's the Anthony Vicino. If it's Twitter, it's just Anthony Vicino. Find me, share it with me. I'd love to hear what your words of the year are. And as always, guys and gals, seriously, I appreciate the heck out of you being here and taking some time out of your day. I hope this brought you some value, and I'll see you in the next episode.